You've got like a decade, essentially, where you can go balls to the wall on making things. So you better do it while you can.
It's crazy what you can juggle, the complexity of what you can juggle when it's the only thing you're juggling. The ability to deal with it is all a lot better at 23 as opposed to 43.
Years is a really long time to work as hard as you can on a specific thing. To do that for like another 10 years seems kind of crazy to a lot of people. Hey, welcome to The Great Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me as always is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, Kevin, you've got a story to kick this off because you told me something this morning that made me laugh way longer than it should. Because you're not a young pup anymore. You're not. You talked last week about feeling the aches and pains of old age and the rest, but you did something today. I was talking to you and you're like, oh, no. I've got to talk to HR. And I thought it was over one of those jokes you told that was so funny you had to tell it to HR that they asked you to come into the office and tell them in person.
No,
but the joke here, the funny part is what this conversation was and why it had to happen.
Yeah, the conversation was surrounding the fact that I requested my first ever vacation days in my entire life. Yeah. At age 42, I actually thought to myself, I need some time off here. And I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form not somewhat related to the fact that I am breaking down physically. My arm still hurts. It's slowly getting better, but it still hurts. I still can't lift my right arm over my head. But yeah, I think the feeling the aches and pains of being elderly and thinking to myself, I really need some time off, which will parlay later into the overall topic of today. But I did need guidance. I needed professional guidance from someone, literally, to ask them how to take time off because I didn't know what to do.
You didn't know how to do it.
I'm still not entirely sure. I'm still not entirely sure. I kind of fill out my timesheet, but yeah.
So, what's the process? What do you people do when you want to take one day off in your life? Can you help me through the paperwork?
What do you normal, healthy people do when you actually want to not work for a day? I have, like all of the vacation days saved up for the year because I don't take time off. That was part of the discussion where I was like, how many days off am I allotted? And am I allowed to just sandwich them all together to basically take the rest of December off? And the answer was A, you have a lot, and B, the answer is yes. So that's what's happening.
Do you have to use them to avoid them just being lost?
Yes. Yeah. I specifically said, is this a use it or lose it situation? And she's like, yep. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
use it is.
Well, then why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you going to do with your vacation time?
Well, everybody asks because here's the other thing that like normal people do is like they go places and they're excited about going places. They like book vacations, which means, air travel and hotel or Airbnb, various sites that they're going to see and cocktails they'll drink and foods that they'll try and all of this sort of thing, beaches that they'll lounge on. No, none of that for me. That sounds terrible. I don't want to do any of those things. I am distinctly and explicitly excited about working on Sleep Warrior, about writing, about having no distractions at all, having, no calendars pinging me about a meeting that I have in 10 minutes or people sending me Slack messages what do you think of this? What should we do here? Like nothing. Just turn everything off and become a person, like the average person that existed on planet Earth before, I was going to say 1993, which I think is when the World Wide Web came out, but really it's more like
World Wide Web.
2000 and I don't know, 8 maybe, when like social media really started becoming a thing. Anyway, yeah, I'm going backwards to not being continually pummeled by messages, and I'm just going to work on the thing that I want to work on.
Just a little less terminally online for a few days. And how long do you get? Like 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm okay with being terminally online. I'm not okay with being terminally messaged. That's my problem. Being terminally available.
Yeah, I mean, something I don't think most people have to deal with is what we do, which is working with such a broad spectrum of people geographically that it's always go time for somebody in the world.
Yes.
And that means that the emails and the messages and texts and all of that stuff really go from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, because it's not midnight everywhere in the world. It's a quite convenient time for somebody in Australia, for example. And I know that you work with loads of people on the European style time zones, and it just never really ends in a way where most people, when they're off the clock, they're mostly off the clock. You are never off the clock. I am never off the clock. The clock is oppressive. The clock is an academic concept to us.
Yeah. So there is extra pressure in terms of that bombardment level. So yeah, that's my vacation. My vacation is being not bombarded so that I could work on my creative project, because that's what makes me happy. I realized because I haven't been able to work on the book for 2 reasons. One, work has just been really busy as we're scrambling on a lot of projects to round out the year, basically to get to Christmas sort of. And then my arm, my physical health hasn't really allowed me to feel good about sitting in the chair and typing. I get irritable. Like I get actually, I think irritable, frustrated, cranky. These are the types of words I would use to describe how I get when I'm not able to work on a creative project. It really affects my mood.
No kidding. Yeah, no, I don't have that. I don't have that issue. I mean, I'm relieved probably if I can not think of it being a stay of execution where I have to eventually do double as much to catch up on the creative project. Then I'm happy for a short time, because it's more of a responsibility driven thing. It's all oppressive. We're suffering. We have the most difficult lives of anybody in the world. I think that's safe. I can't imagine anybody who's got it worse than us.
No, certainly not in the year of 2025. But yeah, no, when I'm not able to, I don't know. I imagine that people who are like exercise freaks, or like they love hiking, or, people who have like a thing that they love to do and they're not able to do that thing, that they get just kind of wound up in a negative feedback loop around that, not having that release. Maybe that's a good way to describe it. It's like, if I don't have the creative release, then I'm like, why did I have such a bad day today? And I'm like, because I didn't actually get any creative work done. So anyway, all of this ties into the topic, and
it does fit.
What's funny is this is the springboard for the topic was a piece of advice that I received, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, that I remember distinctly. Well, I remember the gist. I don't remember it word for word because I don't remember anything in that level of resolution. But before we started recording, you were mentioning some story that involved me uh, more recently that I forgot completely. I remembered nothing about this thing,
Oh,
not even like the vaguest like shape of this story. Um, and I mentioned like I have a horrendous memory. And the fact that the springboard for this topic is something that I remember that was older than that, it goes to show how sort of meaningful and formative it was for me for whatever reason, I guess that we'll talk about.
yeah, you're going back like 20 years on this one, aren't you?
But the fact that I remembered it
Close.
is rare. That's sort of the
Mm.
point that I wanted to make because I don't remember much of anything ever, but I did remember this. So I don't think we've talked about him in a while, but there was a guy named Fred Seibert who I can't say that I worked with. I He was one of the owners of Next New Networks, which was what the first company that Michael Stevens was working for. That's which is where he started Vsauce, and then I got hired and started working there. He was one of the investors of Next New Networks, but this guy is like a legend. He's one of these people that whose resume is insane, and he was so impactful, and millions, literally millions of people have loved the things that he brought to fruition, but no one knows who he is. It's like, who is the guy that you sent me his Wikipedia page who designed like the AT&T logo and all these movie posters and like 40 other logos that everyone knows? Like there are people like
Yeah,
this
Saul
that blow me
Bass.
away. What's his name?
Saul Bass. Saul Bass. He and his wife worked on like I bet 100 things that most people would recognize. I like the Bell telephone logo. That the most modern iteration of it. I like that logo a lot. I like Bell Systems, whatever. But when you look up what Saul Bass did, not only does he have dozens of iconic logo designs in his portfolio, but that wasn't even his real like claim to fame. That was like his side gig. It was the thing that he was also very good at. But the number one thing was title sequences for films. That's what he focused on. And so many of the iconic title sequences in the 50s and 60s were things that Saul Bass made. It's probably uncommon. I'm looking through the list to see if there's anything that people now would know extremely well. The opening to West Side Story is probably the best shot. North by Northwest is iconic, but I don't remember the last time I talked to somebody who knew that movie. He did the opening for Goodfellas, so it wasn't just 50s and 60s. And if you've seen that and remember, that was a super iconic thing at the time. Casino as well. But the thing that you might recognize is the opening, like credit sequence, title sequence for Mad Men is it's inspired by what Saul Bass did. And it seemed like the most original, intriguing, awesome intro and TV in like 30 years. Well, it was and it wasn't. It was, but it was also a throwback to all the stuff that Saul Bass did for decades. If you put a gun to 100 people's heads and asked who the person was behind any of this, you were going through 100 bullets. I'm looking at the list. Ocean's 11, the original, he did that. But yeah, there are all these people who just meant everything to so many iconic things, and you'd never know who they were. And what's the list for Fred Seibert? Adventure Time.
Yeah, Adventure Time. But before that, he was really influential with the development of MTV as a brand. And then after, he was like really successful with MTV, he did Cartoon Network, just like Cartoon Network in general. Like he helped shape what the brand of Cartoon Network was. what it looked like, how it presented itself, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah. And that's how I believe that's probably how he got into eventually doing Adventure Time and producing that, because that was part of Cartoon Network. But anyway, so he's one of these guys who wants to have
your best friend, mentor, and godfather.
Yeah, no.
That's the connection we're trying to establish here.
He was none of those things. Well, loosely, I would say mentor fits probably that, but loosely. It's not like he was Mr. Miyagi to my Daniel-san in any way. But he's one of these guys that wants to have lunch with a different person every day. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Like he just likes meeting people, knowing people, picking their brains, all of this stuff, because that's sort of how he makes or made his living, is basically as like a talent nurturer. So he, wants to meet talented people and then give them opportunities. Anyway, it was really fascinating talking to him because he had so much experience in not only television, but music as well. He's like a huge, huge jazz aficionado and was like largely responsible for bringing a lot of like obscure jazz back to the market. And I mean, the guy has just, done all this crazy stuff in media. I don't know. I don't know why this came. He's the one who called me a schlub. I mentioned that story on the podcast at one point. He just flat out to my face said I dressed like a schlub.
You look like a schlub, Lieber.
Yeah. What do you say to that other than, fair enough. I probably should rethink my clothes and hair situation, I guess. And anyway, one of the other things he said that I don't think that I ever mentioned on the podcast was this concept of basically your creative runway being short, and that because of that, you have this window from, let's say like early 20s, probably until about 40, where you really need to make your hay. What's that phrase? Like make your hay while the sun is up or something like that?
Shining.
While the sun's shining. Yeah. That is what he was saying about creative work. He was like, I think I was probably 27 or 28 at the time when he told me this. But he was basically like, listen, you need to do everything and anything you can think of creatively right now, and don't stop. Because by the time you start hitting your early 40s, you're not going to have the energy for it. Like you're going to run out of juice here in about, I don't know, I guess 12 years. So you need to take advantage of this like crazy amount of energy and freedom that you have in this window of your life, because it's not the rest of your life. You're just not going to be able to sort of like burn the candle at both ends, as they say, forever. You've got like a decade essentially where you can go balls to the wall on making things. So you better do it while you can. And now that I'm on the other side of 40, I look in the mirror and I look around me and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, all right. He was right. Like he was completely right. And it doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions to this rule, but I think the rule is right. I see it in myself. I see it in the people that I came up with in YouTube, the people who have retired from YouTube, who, I essentially was a colleague with. And I think he was dead on right with that advice.
I don't. I do 20% and I don't 80%.
Okay.
So I'm interested in how you build out the wisdom here.
Okay.
So I think there's context more than exceptions to this. So I'm going to put you on the spot and say go for it.
The reasons why I think he's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that there are it's a multifaceted thing.
Okay.
One has to do, I think, with responsibilities, where the older that you get, the more responsibilities come into your life in a way that just weren't there when you're 28, let alone when you're like 22. And I don't think that there's really any avoiding that. There just comes a time, and people listening to this might have a huge amount of responsibility at 24 years old. That's, of course, obviously possible. I didn't. Okay, for me. So let's just keep the spotlight on me. I did not have, children or a spouse or like sick parents or a sick relative. I myself was in good health. Like I didn't have health problems that I needed to constantly work through. And I was just free to sort of do anything. And so if there's an opportunity to move to Manhattan and work in this office building and, commute back and forth every day from an apartment in Brooklyn, the answer is yeah, sure. Let me see. Let me look at my watch. Yeah, I'll be there next week. There's no like, oh, I have to get all my ducks in a row and I have to figure out. It's like, no, I'll just go. I'll just go and just go do it. And for the most part, I think there are a lot of people who are in that, especially nowadays, in their 20s, especially. Maybe some people fall off when they get into their 30s. But I think by the time you're 40, especially, there's a huge difference between the checklist of responsibilities that you have. Whether it is now you do have a family and you have a mortgage and you need a new roof on your house and, your mother-in-law has to move in with you because she can't afford to live on her own anymore. And your father-in-law passed away or whatever it is. It's like all of the like the real life stuff. I think the calculus of real life stuff changes tremendously on average for people between these ages of 25 and 40. Do you agree with that?
I do completely. All sorts of stuff gets in the way as time goes on, and we have seen this with a lot of YouTube people who have had the audacity, and frankly, it's disgusting sometimes what they do. The crimes that they've committed against the platform, against their audience, by getting married, having children, getting sick. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Having all of these things pop into their lives and derail their videos. That stuff hits, it's more likely to hit at 35 than 19. It's even things as simple as getting a pet. And this is a major restrictor for people who are like newly adults and onward. Getting a dog is especially a dog, much more than a cat. It defines your ability to do all sorts of different stuff. It limits it tremendously, right? Because cats, they're pretty easy to I don't want to say, be away from or make it sound like you're abandoning them, whatever. But a cat doesn't need to like go on a walk to go to the bathroom 90 times a day the way a lot of dogs do. And if you're 27 and you have an apartment somewhere and you get a dog, you might as well have a child. It's that much of a schedule restrictor, right? And all of these things add up big time. You take just life circumstances popping out of nowhere and also changing. And I've been through this in the last 5 years, really, with my parents' health declining, their eventual deaths. Not only is that in itself a thing that's a schedule disruptor and difficult to deal with, but then even after it's happened, everything has changed for you in some meaningful way. Well, that kind of thing is more common when you're 40 than when you're 20, right? And so I think that Fred is exactly right about this. In that general sense that like you have a degree of freedom, you have fewer attachments, you have more flexibility when you're younger and have the energy, right? But it's really practical too in just straight up relationships, whether it's friends or romantic, where it's easier to get away with having an uncommon schedule on the younger side than when you're like 38 it's really hard to find people who match your life when you're older, a weird creative life that might, it might include travel. It might include you just needing to work on something at crazy hours to get it done, to get it out of you, to whatever. It's one thing to absorb that when the people around you are all 22 and also have weird lives, because almost everybody who's young does. Well, when you're 40, that doesn't match up with a lot of people who are themselves now limited and going through all of these different things that I just listed. So it does make a lot of sense in that respect.
Yeah, and the types of people, I'm trying to think of the types of people, like Tom Scott came to mind for me immediately as far as somebody who, oh my gosh, just had like the Energizer Bunny on crack amount of energy to pour into all of his creative projects for a decade, and then took his ball and went home. He basically was like, I'm done. And, I haven't spoken with him. The last time I talked to Tom was when he had decided, I think, that he was like, I'm going to do this like year and a half long sprint of crazy projects, traveling all over the place, and then I'm going to be done. I think that was the last time I talked to him. And I don't think I've talked to him since he stopped doing that. But it made a lot of sense to me. I was like, yeah, that makes sense, is to just go crazy, crazy hard and then not do that anymore. What's his name? Matt Pat is another person who, he sold Game Theory, the Theorist channels, and now does other things. I think he's involved in plays. I know that he has like political advocacy things that he's involved
he's starting
in.
That, yeah.
He's just doing other stuff. And so that was another sort of thing that's like not exactly what Fred was saying, but I do think is really relevant to this overall. And maybe it's not, but I'll say it anyway, is at least in my case, okay, and I think that I've seen this in other people, is that creative people get bored of the thing after a certain amount of time. Like 10 years is a really long time to work as hard as you can on a specific thing. To do that for like another 10 years after that seems kind of crazy, I think, to a lot of people. And I'm certainly one of them. I've spoken either on the last podcast or the one before where, I have this sort of mortal clock ticking in my head where it's like, okay, here are the things I want to get done before I die. And making, I don't know, like the 900th YouTube video is not on that list. Like at some point you're like, okay, I think I have done this to the best of my ability. And just as someone who's interested in a lot of creativity and art in media in general, it would be fulfilling and interesting for me and my brain to try something else. So I do think that there's probably a lot of creative people who run into that too. Like even if they are really successful in their 20s and their 30s, when they get to their 40s and beyond, you have a decision to make. And it's like a really important decision. It's like, do I just keep doing this same thing forever? Or do I try something else? Because
the calculus changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You really do. The calculus does change when you're like, okay, how many more years do I have to live? And how do I want to spend that time?
Right. Right. And you do see a lot of people. Matt Pat's a really good example for this, because as he got older, he went from being the creator in all of his projects. He was the on-screen talent. He was the mind. He was doing all this to slowly more of a producer type, overseer, executive type role, which he increased. And now he's not, waking up and turning the camera on. You can see how people who have been locked in to a degree to that role, how they've had to deal with it over time. And I think of Phil DeFranco on this, where you're the news guy, you're the many videos a week, you're the guy on camera saying it, you're the personality that is associated with it, it's your name, it's your face, it's your everything. This is hard to get away from, right? You can't just, somebody like Phil can't just easily say, you know what, I'm going to switch this to more of a 9 to 5 and we'll just see what happens. Like, no, it's not that simple. James Rolfe talked about this with us, about going into having his role change as he not only just got older, but like he got the wife and the kids and the things that play really poorly with the schedule and lifestyle and everything that he had when he was goofing off about video games. Well, at a certain point, you have to decide what's important to you and how it's going to play together in a compatible way. Some people get out altogether and they just quit and do other stuff, which is also valid. It's totally valid to pull the plug. But I've seen it with you and us, where think about the goofy schedules and tasks and life pressures that we had 15 years ago, where we were kind of up for anything and we would do whatever it took to grind through even tiny things. And if there was something we didn't know how to do, it was like shrug, okay, you figure out how to do it, no matter how long it takes, even if it's completely foreign. Whereas now we can't do that. It's not possible to do that and meet all of the responsibilities that have come up. Even things that, not just stuff where it's like, oh, I enjoy this other thing more and I don't want to sacrifice this. It's like, we're in December. There's a great deal of snow outside. I have to plow that snow. If I don't plow that snow, nobody else is going to. If I don't put the plow on the tractor before the snow hits, nobody else is going to. There's a lot that I wanted to do, would have rather done a month ago than spend an afternoon attaching a snow plow and like fixing the parts that have worn out after a few years. But I couldn't make that choice, right? Or like I couldn't choose an alternative. There was no alternative. So it's happened. It's happened for both of us in different ways, and then all of these people that by now we've seen over a long period of time.
Well, yeah, and I do think that's another thing. It does seem like with a lot of people, yeah, you're okay doing everything yourself and working 12 hours a day,
Yes.
7 days a week for a really long time, but. And for a really long time, I mean like 10 to 15 years. But then for a lot of people, at some point, you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm just going to pay somebody else to do it. And now I'm in more of like an admin role or like a producer role, which is what Matt Pat did, where he's like, okay, I still am going to make all of the important decisions here. But like, I don't need to be, editing every single video myself. I can hire somebody to do that. All of these little things, but the dynamic changes for you where at one point, like when Vsauce 2 had its, largest growth period, I was making a video every 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it took,
you were grinding that. Yeah.
The reason it was every 5 days is that it took me 5 days to make a video. Okay. So let me say that again. When Vsauce 2 was growing its fastest, I was uploading every 5 days because it took me 5 days to make a video. So I did that for about 2.5 years, solid straight. That is all I did for like 2.5 years, 7 days a week with no break, no vacations. Like I would take Thanksgiving and Christmas off. But aside from that, literally not stopping for a couple of years of doing nothing but coming up with a video idea, doing the research, finding all the assets, writing the script, recording it, editing the video, putting it together, making the thumbnail, coming up with the title, doing the description, uploading the video, walking away from that video and starting over on the next one for a couple of years. That's like literally all I did. Like I could not do that. It's
not accidental that this coincided with that growth period.
No,
it was absolutely necessary to maximize that. That they went together. Like that was that growth was a result of you doing what you just described.
Yeah. But doing that now is like maddening to me. I mean, just like the grind that we were under with doing the popular science videos, you know, I would have been able to handle that much better when I was 28 than I could at 41. There was just a difference. And I'm not saying all of it was mental, like I didn't have the mental energy to do it. It's just, I didn't have the mental energy to do that while also trying to live the life of a 41-year-old man who has a house and, there's iron bacteria in my well water and I'm trying to figure out like there's all this other crap that I didn't have then. I just didn't. It was like, I know nothing to worry about other than making YouTube videos at all.
It's crazy what you can juggle, the complexity of what you can juggle when it's the only thing you're juggling.
Right.
When you have to keep like 4 different juggling acts going at the same time, then it gets more difficult. And even when you can do it, which you did just fine. You didn't have, even at the most difficult sort of grind pace with all those different things, and you did have like timing that couldn't be avoided. You were moving. You were constructing a place to live. You were rebuilding a life from moving. All of these things that had this like totally coincidental timing. Like it just happened to work out that way. But even when that was at its most difficult, like, you were still doing the job just fine. But it's not easy, and it wears on you in a way that it's not the same as when you're young. It's sort of like how, like a college kid can wake up super hungover and pop 2 Tylenol and get on with their day on like 3 hours sleep, or they can stay up all night doing something and then go through the next day and not feel 100%, but then, crash at the end of the night and it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. The ability to pull that off now, the recovery time that difficulty takes is not the same. And when you have responsibilities like family, kids, perpetual house, whatever it is, those things don't allow you to have recovery time on your schedule most of the time. They continue to roll as they continue to roll. I mentioned snow because I have no idea when I'm going to have to plow. I can't even look at the weather in the morning and know for sure whether that's going to let me know when or if I have to spend an hour or two plowing. It's just not accurate enough. We were talking about this the other day, that snow out of nowhere that wasn't even on the app. It didn't even show that there was going to be snow. All of a sudden, it was this nightmarish situation that by force of luck, I happened to take care of. You just don't know. Those things don't wait for you to recover or feel better or have some other thing settle down.
Yeah, there are a couple of like weird examples of this concept that I wanted to bring up that are kind of depressing, but whatever. Here we go. So
do it.
When I was thinking about this, you have to be creative while you're young concept. I thought of musicians, and one example that is really confusing to me that I don't understand is the band Silverchair, which was a grunge band in the 90s that they were like made fun of a lot because they were kids. They were like literally 15 years old, I think, when Frog Stomp, the first album, came out. And this was like the tail end of the grunge era. And Silverchair got made fun of. They were like famously referred to as Nirvana in pajamas by Rolling Stone, I think by Rolling Stone magazine.
They were halfway between, if you put Nirvana and Hanson in a jar and shook it and dumped it out, you'd get Silverchair.
Kind of.
That's a very unkind way to put it. It's so reductive, but I'm also not entirely wrong.
Yeah, I think from an outsider's perspective, I think that's a fair case to make. Anyway, Daniel Johns, who's the lead singer, songwriter, guitar player, as far as I could tell, just kind of went insane around.
Oh, really?
I wonder how old he was. I wonder how old he is now. Let's see. How old is Daniel Johns? Okay, he's 46 now. So, I mean, I think it was when he was probably approaching the age of 40. He just kind of went nuts, and he developed this like extreme anxiety with performing, performing on stage. All of a sudden, he had like crippling anxiety over it, which the guy had been doing his entire life since literally he was like 15 years old. He's like playing on the like Radio City Music Hall sign in Manhattan for the MTV Music Awards. And then at the age of like 38 or something, he's like, I literally can't do this thing at all anymore.
Got the yips. He got the yips. And so Silverchair has been over for a while now. I don't remember what their last album came out. I want to say 2007. I could look it up real quick. I didn't expect Silverchair to be the part of the topic today.
Oh, I nailed it. 2007. So it's been we're getting close to 20 years now on them just being over. And they'll never, as far as I can tell, ever be a band again, because Daniel Johns, as he approached 40, this like scary number just turned into like a puddle of goo.
Yeah, that's terrible. Very unfortunate.
Oh, yeah. For those who gave up on Silverchair in the early grunge days, their later albums were not anything like that. They were more, I don't know what you would say, alt rock, but beautiful singing. Like Daniel Johns has probably the most underrated singing voice in like the history of popular music, I think.
Yeah, he was very talented. I assume still is.
Well, we kind of won't know. And that's the thing with a lot of those musicians that we grew up with, they kind of go insane, like in their 40s. Yeah. And I don't know how to square that. Like, I don't understand what happens there. But so many of them are dead, either on purpose or sort of kind of on purpose, but not exactly. In that age bracket of like 40 to 50. And I don't know why. Yeah. What's going on there?
That's its own episode topic. I mean, there's a point where things start to go off the rails with complexity and weirdness after 10, 20 years of doing things a certain way. And artists and creatives tend to have lives that get to be wobbly down the road, right? Really unstable. And also they by default, because of that lifestyle scheduling, all the logistic stuff and the personality stuff. I know this myself. The number of people who I match with friendships, relationships, etc. over the years, it's a really small slice of the population because it's not compatible at all with normal people and normal lives. I was talking to you, we did kind of a powwow about, what we'll do in the next month and beyond. We did that today. Well, I needed that today because as of 2 weeks ago, I realized that I'll be spending a couple weeks in Albania shortly. That was not something I anticipated. I'll spend some time in Argentina as well right after that, same amount of time. Well, I'm looking at in the winter, late winter, spring, probably being gone half the time. What kind of person what kind of life does a person have to match up with that?
It's impossible. Yeah.
It's near impossible. Yeah. And so it's really common for, people in the industries that they're working in the creative industries, to match up with other people in those industries, whether it's in an adjacent role or right within it. Because who else are you going to match up with? Who else are, so as much as you see, is less common now, but for 70 years, it was huge news with who's dating who in Hollywood and TV, right? And it was extremely common for actors and actresses to pair up one way or another. Occasionally, that was PR stuff. It wasn't real. But most of the time, it was real. And if you think about it, if you're somebody who all of a sudden has to go shoot for 46 days in Tunisia because a man named George Lucas has a sci-fi film that is a weird experimental thing, and it's 1977. Well, who else is going to match with that? Well, somebody else who gets dragged away to weird places for odd amounts of time to do bizarre things. Yeah. So there's a really limited pool. But I mean, we know this, and anybody who's listened to the podcast, we've talked to some weirdos. I love them. I love the guests that we've had. To say that we've had all normal guests would be incredibly dishonest. Even the really normal, even the really like, the decent people with predictable lives and like normal looking lives, they're still weirdos. If they weren't, they wouldn't be doing creative things. they wouldn't be involved in any of this stuff at all. So even the normies in the creative world are still weirdos, but generally the artists and the musicians and the YouTubers and all of this are not normal people. They aren't at all. Everybody knows this. That's why like drama and commentary is its own giant vertical in online discourse, because there's a lot of weird stuff to talk about. So anyway, this was a very long way to say that when you're deep into a career, let's say you're 40 plus, everybody's been doing this stuff since they were, a teen. It's not like people at 31 decide to pick up an instrument for the first time and then become a professional musician. Almost everybody who's a creative type has been doing it since day one. So when you're 40, you've spent a solid 25 years being a super weirdo and generally surrounding yourself with weirdos. That gets wobbly. That catches up. Throw in some of the difficult things to deal with in life, like drugs, alcohol, money, etc. The lack of stability, because again, these types of people usually don't at 24 buy a simple house in the middle of Idaho. They're bouncing around like vagrants from city to city, depending on what work demands. This just catches up and people go off the rails.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. That is really interesting. You're right.
You can only do it for so long.
Yeah, you can only do it for a lot of people can only do it for so long. And eventually you have to do something else. There are a couple of other things that I think are worth sort of tagging on this topic, because even if you're successful in your creative life, which is, rare and difficult, the average lifespan of that being, how would you say, popular enough probably to make a living off of? I'm not exactly sure how to define this, but usually you have like, what did they say that the average lifespan of a YouTube channel is like 3? Is it 3 years or it might be 3 or 8 on the high end. 8 seems too long. But anyway, it's not 15. It's not even 12. So my point here is like, even if miraculously the thing that you're doing gets to be popular and other people like it, the likelihood that they're still going to like that thing in 10 years is really low.
Yes.
And so now you're dealing with not being popular anymore. Like the wave has crested, right? And now you're on like the downturn of your career. And I think that's another part of this topic, which is like, now what do you do when things aren't going well anymore?
Right.
You either try to reinvent yourself. I think like Madonna might be a really good example of someone who reinvented David Bowie before her, but Madonna, which is still a really old kind of boomer example to use. I don't know who would be.
Do you know who you're missing
more
on reinvention?
Yes. No, I don't. Who?
You're missing Kevin Lieber of Vsauce 2. How many formats did you go through not because there was some tremendous failure, but you see that a thing has run its course and it's time for something fresh. You did it like 5-6 times. It was like a year and a half, 2 years, where it's just you've got to come up with a new angle on content, right? That satisfies what the audience wants, what you want to do, satisfies everything. That's its own grind. I think a lot of people get tired of that, or they don't want to. They just want to do what they want to do.
And that's what I was going to say, is that is a grind. It's hard. It's hard to keep doing that.
Brutal.
Like even if you're okay doing that and you're like, oh, this format doesn't work anymore, or this style of music doesn't work anymore. Maybe I'm Bob Dylan and I'll go electric because that's what the kids are listening to nowadays. Whatever it is. It's really hard to keep doing that. It's hard emotionally and mentally and even creatively to start from zero again and say, okay, now what? That sucks after 10 years.
Now imagine every time that came up, where every format thing is a gamble. There's no guarantee at all it's going to work out. Not just well, but work out at all. Like, you're taking a chance that it's going to be even worse than the thing that you think you need to replace.
Oh, that happened on Vsauce too. When we did the weird questions videos, like, that did not go well. That didn't work.
And a couple of those were really good videos, but for whatever reason, they didn't land. They didn't hit. Now, substitute your life then and my life then too. We were both rolling dice on this, and we weren't rolling dice on like, oh, if this doesn't work out, my newborn baby won't have health insurance. Like we weren't gambling really serious stuff. Well, like we talked about, these serious things come into play. They're more of a factor. Well, do you want to deal with reinvention, with any of the pressures that come along with the creative stuff? Can you still make the gamble as time goes on? Well, it becomes a grim prospect for a lot of people. Most of whom, honestly, are, I don't want to say paycheck to paycheck or hand to mouth, but like most people who do creative stuff are really living their lives and covering their lives, and that's good. But there's not tremendous flexibility. Not too many of them have like a 36-month disaster fund if things don't work out. That buys them enough time to figure out.
They don't have a 401k or like a pension on the way to look forward to. Like, that's not a thing for any creative professional.
Yeah, most of them just don't have too much, and so they increasingly are faced with the prospect of gambling the ability to pay rent or a mortgage or car payment, health insurance premiums, whatever. Or if you're in a country that has all of those things, simply having the life you need to have as you survive the tax burden, where a country is taking 50% of every dollar you make. The calculus changes, and it becomes a lot more appealing to say, I've acquired this set of skills that's really valuable in the marketplace. It's time for me to transition into a different type of role where I don't have to gamble these things quite as severely. You never quite know how it's going to turn out, right? You can put a lot in. You can put a lot in to hoping a job does, but stuff happens. Stuff happens. And the question becomes, can you at least mitigate the risk when the rug gets pulled in a normal way, right? Well, the appetite, the energy, the resilience, the ability to deal with it is all a lot better at 23 as opposed to 43.
Yeah, so I don't want to end this discussion at all without mentioning it doesn't have to be this way because there is another way to look at this, and there's another way to do this. In my opinion, I do think Fred is right for the majority of people. However, because everything always has exceptions, there are exceptions to this. So one of the examples from my own life is I had a professor in college who was a professor for however many years you need to do that until you can retire with a pension. And he did that and then moved to the Adirondacks and just plays music like 5 nights a week. That's what he wanted to do. So there's the other option here, if you don't grind through your 20s and 30s until you go insane or have some family problem or whatever it is, 40 things we've already talked about, is if you can set your life up in a way where you are then free to pursue creative stuff in some fashion later in life. Like, I remember talking to him about this. Like, this was something that he had planned for a really long time. And essentially, as soon as that, whatever that retirement fund was for him kicked in, he was like, peace. And he moved to like a cabin in the woods in the Adirondacks with his guitar. And just all he does now is play music. That's all he does. And he's been doing that now for like 20 years. For some reason, I also thought of the military as sort of this like reverse Fred Seibert rule. Because I remember, we did that video with the Navy, and I got to know John Davis.
Yeah, the nuke tech.
The nuke tech.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Friggin' awesome guy. Really, really enjoyed talking to him.
Can I stop and say he's one of the biggest chads I've ever met in my life? Like everything about him. Everything about him was like 11 out of 10 on the slider.
On the Chad scale?
On the Chad scale. Yeah, like hyper intelligent, great looking guy, really great personality. Like, he was a super soldier. When we met him, it was incredible. It was incredible because, we've had some dicey decades militarily. I met him and I was like, we're good for 50 years. There's literally no other country that can compete with a military with this man in it. It's like there's something happening in some lab, some Stranger Things type military installation that produces a man like this. That is just, I feel like he could pick up a sport and in like 6 weeks qualify for the Olympics in it. It was incredible. Just one of those people. And I've met literally like 3 to 5 of them in my life, and he was one.
Right. He's like one of the...
Shout out to the nuke tech.
The Chuck Norrises, where it's like, heights are scared of him, That's those Chuck Norris
It's just hard to believe that somebody like that is real, in the sense that you're like, wow, this is like 10 impressive people who happen to be in the same person. That's incredible.
Yeah, real life G.I. Joe. Well, at that time, he was, contemplating going back in to the Navy.
Right.
So they have these like contracts, right, where they sign on for a certain period and then if they get promoted, then they have the opportunity to sign on for like a longer period, and they get these huge signing bonuses and all of this stuff. But the basic gist is that what I learned talking to him about this is like, if you have this career in the military and you give them 20 years of your life, from the time you sign on at 18 to the time you hit that 20-year mark when you're 38, you retire and you're set for life. Like, you never have to do anything else. You have tons of money. You have like a crazy pension. Like, you are done at that point.
I've seen enough Caleb Hammer episodes to know that it's dicier than that.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So I have an infantile understanding of this.
No, but generally, like, that's a possible path, right? Like, that exists. It exists for military people. It exists for policemen, firefighters, people who, there are some unionized professions where you can start really young, put in 20, 25 years and then do something else. You can, you've put in your time and you can get on with things and, worry less about income, health insurance, et cetera, where, it's not going to be, it doesn't have to be some crazy retirement scenario. Although in the past, there were parts of the United States where it was. There's some really good sort of police focused films and TV shows where you'll get like a community in New Jersey where everybody's like 43 years old and they're retired policemen on like a $200,000 a year pension.
Oh my gosh.
They make for good media. But yeah, that's totally an option where you can kind of have two adult lives. You have the life where you put in this service, and then whatever life you want to have after it.
Well, it seemed like, and maybe my understanding of this was skewed by talking to like the LeBron James of the military. So like maybe his opportunities were like, a little different than the majority of people's. But it did seem like that there was this path where you like grind like crazy through your 20s and 30s at work, and then you're free for the rest of your life to pursue sort of anything else. But I guess the principle still really applies, where it's like those 2 decades are where you put in like the blood, sweat, and tears when you have the energy, you have the health, and you have sort of the freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. For people like him, it was a total commitment, because he was, a high level enlistment, right? Like
really high level, would have no really life outside of doing the Navy stuff. No, he could not do anything else.
Truly an all-encompassing contract that you're signing over life with each extension of that. So, yes. I don't want it to, I don't want it to sound like, somebody shows up for work for 20 years and, they just do a job and then like, it's an easy one for him. No. Despite his being hyper talented at everything, it was obvious from the little bit of time we spent with him that they demanded and extracted everything possible from him.
Yes.
And I mean that in a positive way, but it's like, you are a tremendous asset. If you keep doing this, then we're happy to have you, and your life is ours. And I'm so glad that he seemed to make it work for him. I hope he's doing well now. You still follow him on Instagram, don't you? Keep up with him?
On Facebook, we're Facebook friends. Yeah,
Facebook friends. Yeah,
seems. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure he went on to be an instructor. I think that was the level that he was at, where he was teaching at some military college or whatever military facility. I don't know. I'm such an idiot on this topic.
Yeah, if you're still struggling to picture what this guy is like, imagine like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, but not like a psycho. Imagine being disciplined, serious, and a good guy, not a wild card, but that level of talent being used by the military.
Yeah, with a bicep bigger than my head.
Yeah, this is why I said Chad. It's like a good-looking man built like an actual G.I. Joe. Nuts. Can I tell you what I hate about Fred's advice, though?
Oh, yes, finally. I've been waiting for I always like to hear what you hate.
Okay. One of the worst parts of being terminally online from the beginning, which I was from the 90s. I had a conversation the other day where somebody younger than I am was talking about how they made their first website on Blogspot. And you know how primitive that was. And it was like, that was the joke. It's like, oh, I made my first site on Blogspot. I had to tell them about GeoCities and what it was like to learn how to code basic HTML.
Angel Fire, baby.
Angel Fire. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But as you go on with career and learn a bit more and hopefully get better, which I hope I have over the years, it's like the Matthew McConaughey line where like you keep getting older and they stay the same age. Well, the young people do stay the same age. They're young and new at what they do, and it's just a new crop of them all the time. And that means underdeveloped and undeveloped talent and knowledge bases, right? What I'm trying to say in a polite way is that young creatives know a great deal less. They just don't know that much. And it's not through any fault of their own. You can't speed this stuff up at all. But Kevin, a video you would make right now versus imagine making a Vsauce 2 video at 21. How good is it going to be? How many different topics are you able to pull in? How many perspectives are you going to get? What are you going to see? Even evaluating assets, even visually, just saying like, I know out of all the things in the world that this is the right thing to put on screen right now. You're better at that now than you were half your life ago because you simply have the experience and you know more. So when I hear something that's like, your prime, your best is when you're really young as a creative, in a way that's true. And this is the 20% I agree with. You have the energy, you don't have the liabilities and the attachments. You can pull it off, and it's extremely valuable to develop habits for work when you're young. This is the time when you get really good at the process of working. But you don't have the judgment. You don't have the knowledge base. You don't have the experience. You can only get that further in the game. I am getting started with serious creative stuff right now. I think that I'm halfway through my career. And I'm not 22 and I don't have the energy, and all the stuff you said is completely and totally true. But what I do have is a pretty good knowledge base to do some of these projects where I'm working on a documentary that's in Albania, another one in Argentina. I can do this because I know those subjects well enough. I know how to tell a compelling story in a way that I didn't in the past. So in a way, Fred's right. In a way, I feel like that's not true. Oddly, he's a perfect example of it, where Fred's not young. I don't know how old he is, but he's not 30. He wasn't 26 when he was an executive producer of Adventure Time. Kevin talked about him being instrumental with MTV and early days on Cartoon Network. You can imagine, how long his career has been. Well, he was awesome at what he did with those things, and made the Frederator Studios that pumped out a bunch of great stuff, precisely because he wasn't 17. He had all of the knowledge and experience that could make those things successful. So if you blast it out and do every push you can to, let me see, he co-founded a record label in 1972. My parents didn't even co-found me until 1982. Right? So he's
co-found. I've never heard anybody refer to them as co-founding. Oh, it's so funny.
But this is precisely my point, is that he was doing that high energy, like do it all because you can in the 70s, Well, then he was pretty good by the 80s. So he was instrumental with MTV. Well, he was really good, even better in the 90s. And then he was crushing it in the 2000s. So this is a really long game. It doesn't matter what you do. You get better and better at this stuff as the time goes on, or at least you can and you should. I think it changes over time. We talked about the ways that it does, but is the push, and I'm looking at his timeline again, was his push to do something impressive and important in 2000, was that any different than with a record label in 72? I hope not. I bet not. I bet it was just as important to him, and he put everything he was able to put into it at that time, just under different circumstances. So I am biased in the sense that I do feel like I am just getting started on creative stuff, despite being, probably halfway through my life. But at the same time, thank God. Can you imagine how stupid these projects would turn out to be if I'd done them even 10 years ago? They wouldn't be nearly as good because I wouldn't have known then what I know now. So I like the patience, applying patience to this idea where you say, yes, you pursue everything, you establish the habits, you get used to the creative life and what it entails. But you don't have a limited supply of energy. It does change in the way I describe this myself when I say, I was talking to my brother a couple of weeks ago, and said that, I'm gearing up. The physical demands are tougher on a project like I'm about to do than they used to be. I don't have the resilience. The recovery is longer, everything like that. And I don't know how long I can do it at the level I need to. I think I've got 3 to 5 years. And the way I explained it was saying, like, I'm not washed up, but I'm Tom Brady on the Bucs now. I'm not Tom Brady and the Patriots in his prime. Uh-huh. I can still win a Super Bowl, but like, we're late in the game, and this isn't going to last forever. But I just really want to encourage people who are later in the game or feel like they are past a physical prime or they have responsibilities or liabilities that make it tough to be a creative. No, you have other things that the young people don't have. You have knowledge and experience that has been building, hopefully. If you've done it right, it has been building this whole time, and now you can deploy it. I imagine that Cartoon Network in 1974 would have been a stupid joke. It would have been terrible. I bet Fred would have blown it. I seriously doubt he would have had the ability, the knowledge, etc., to pull off a project like that. He probably wouldn't have known the sector itself well enough. Well, later on, he had this tremendous body of experience to draw on to see a goofy little thing that turns out to be Johnny Bravo and recognize, yeah, this is cool, and here's why people are going to like it. Here's why I like it. Let's make that happen. So that judgment takes time. The experience takes time. That's a really critical part, in my estimation, of making the creative stuff work.
Yeah. So, well, and the thing, I wish that I had the exact stats on this, but I did see something in regards to like novel writing in particular is like,
oh yeah,
kind of an older folks game. It's like, you really kind of have to have that experience and that wisdom built up in order to be able to write a book that resonates with people. And I think early to mid 40s is sort of, when, as opposed to like music, when that's really like, that's a young man's game. Writing is an older person's game. So yeah, depending on what you're trying to do, this advice shifts. But yeah, I think the two main things are, if you are on the older side like us, it's really about deploying the wealth of knowledge that you've built up. And if you're on the younger side listening to this, then you got to go. Go do it. Go now and go hard if you can. Yeah. When you can.
That's where the judgment and experience comes in, from having done all of that stuff when you were able to. So yes, what you'll put out, a lot of it will be dumb. And we see this with YouTubers a lot too. How many of them delete their old videos because they're so embarrassed by how crummy they are? Because they've evolved to a point where it's just cringe stuff, right? Well, that's good. That's a very good thing. But you only get to the good point when you've put out a lot of cringe. You talk about writing. Yeah, not a whole lot of important work comes out of the 20-somethings. It really doesn't. And there's a lot of cringe stuff that does. This is what I'm talking about, where I see constantly this fresh crop of people who just produce shit. It's just valueless, like whatever. And they might be really good over time, but right now they're not. I mean, the stuff I did write 20 years ago was terrible. It was just awful. And I'm so glad that I waited. I'm so glad that I waited to have a push on creative stuff until now. And it is a lot tougher in some ways. But I'm thrilled that I didn't completely gun it on output.
Yeah. All right. That's it for this week. Thank you to all of our patrons for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferry-kun, Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Piddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev's Dead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yosua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it, and thanks to Main Gear for powering all our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.